Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we're going to look at the very last Chinese military Kalashnikov. This is the Type 56C. Now, the Type 56 is the standard designation for the Chinese, for the Kalashnikov, for the AK, and they would try to develop in fact they successfully developed away from the AK pattern well before this rifle was developed. So there was the Type 63, which I have a separate video on. That was an unsuccessful attempt to get away from the AK. They ended up, the 63 wasn't really successful. They went back to AKs. And then they developed the Type 81 rifle, which was more successful. And then the Type 87 rifle, and then they had some later developments after that. But after the 87, in 1988, we get development of the 56C here beginning. And this was originally intended to be a gun used for export, but it ended up being used by Chinese special forces and Chinese police agencies. Now what's really interesting to me here is, while this looks like a kind of cool short AK with a little different rear sight, it actually differs in virtually all of the parts, almost. A handful of things here are interchangeable with the regular AK, but most of it's not. So let's dig in and let's go through this and see what it actually looks like on the inside and what you get with an adjustable gas block unique receiver AK. This definitely is a nice compact little carbine. We have the side folding stock. The barrel on here is 8.4 inches long, plus this muzzle device flash hider out there. Now, this is also set up with a 20-round magazine. It was designed this would have been issued with 20-round magazines just as part of its overall compact nature, but it does take all standard AK magazines. So it'll take 30s, drums, etc. But that's what's intended to go in it. It is, of course, select fire. So we have L for semi-auto, D for full auto. Those are the Latin character translations of the Chinese words for semi and full auto. On the trunnion here, these markings are a little bit dull and hard to see, but we have a factory 66 in a triangle mark, the model designation 56C, and the serial number, which on this one is 100,044. So this is a very early production example. So a couple distinctive elements here. We have black plastic furniture on the gun, the panels on the stock, the pistol grip, which also has finger grooves in it, and it has a storage bay inside. The front polymer handguard is a little bit different than sort of a standard AK one. It's got this wider section at the back, sort of acts as a hand stop, kind of. Then there are a couple elements that I want to touch on specific to the receiver. So this receiver looks the same as a regular AK, but it's actually different in just about every way. Let's start by comparing it to a standard Type 56 stamped AK receiver. First off, note that the rivets on the front trunnion here are in the more European pattern. The Chinese Type 56 has the front two rivets offset like this, not in parallel. This is what you would see on Soviet style. Romanian, Polish, Bulgarian, all of those have rivet setups like this. The rear trunnion rivets are also set up rather differently than a Type 56 with this same pattern of folding stock. And the receiver here is actually shorter. So if I line up the front end of the receivers, you can see that the 56C ends about here. It's about 20 millimeters shorter than the standard Type 56 receiver. So that's kind of weird. And then if we look at the bottom side of the receiver on a standard Type 56, or really any standard AKM, this is linear. So it's the receiver tapers a little bit. It's a little taller at the back and a little shorter at the front, but it's a continuous taper. On the 56C, when you get right here to basically the back of the magazine well, the receiver actually pitches up. So there's a little less material in the front trunnion. There's a little tiny bit less material in the receiver. That helps lighten the gun a little bit. And that is one of several design cues taken from the Chinese Type 81s. They have a very different style of receiver, but they have a similar feature where the receiver is parallel out here and then angles up when it gets to the magazine well. That is not the only cue that the 56C takes from the Type 81. Since we're here, I will point out the rear sights as well, which are obviously very similar in design. The 56C has this kind of unique hooded rear sight. Underneath is just a fairly standard sort of notch, and it has this adjustment dial which goes from 1 to 2 to 3, and that just changes the height of the rear sight there between the different settings. The front sight looks pretty typical AK here, but it's actually a little bit narrower side to side, and it's a little bit of a shorter front sight post than on a regular AK. There's your regular AK for comparison. And this is once again a design feature taken from the Type 81, which is also this rather narrow and short front sight block. Now, a few more features to point out. We have a flash hider with a big expansion chamber there. This is left-hand threaded, but I can take it off here. And there you go. You just got an expansion chamber there to help get rid of flash. And there's the actual muzzle. This does have a chrome-lined barrel in it. And here's an unusual feature on an AK. It has an adjustable gas port. So if we look at this really close, we have a 1, a 0, and a 2. And it's the position right above this little spring catch that is the one that is currently set. So this is currently on gas setting 1. It's a little tough on this to change gas positions, but what you do is just lift up on the spring catch and you can rotate the gas plug. If I rotate it clockwise, I can bring this cutout section in line with the gas block, and I can remove the whole gas plug. There it is. There we go. That comes out, and you can sort of see the gas port in there. But essentially what is happening is the gas port is lining up with one of these two troughs. So this allows gas to be vented into the gas piston. This is the 2 setting for the most gas. This is the 1 setting for less gas, and then the cutoff section is right in the middle. The rest of this disassembly is basically AK, so we can take the dust cover off. Notice, of course, here's another differentiation from typical Chinese designs. This is a ribbed top cover. That's something that was done by the Soviets, done by a lot of the European manufacturers, but the Chinese on a Type 56 stuck with a smooth, heavier gauge top cover. So this is unique to the 56C. Note that it's pretty thin material, and they actually did go and reinforce it here at the back. Next difference we find on the return spring, the main spring here. So to compare again, a typical Type 56 or most of the other types of AKs you'll find out there have a joint in the spring here so that you can bend it to more easily get it into the gun. The 56C does not do that. It has a telescoping 2-piece rod. There we go. So it still compresses, of course, but you have just a little bit of wiggle here, and it doesn't have a joint in it. We pull out the bolt carrier. Of course, the gas piston is shorter than a normal AK gas piston. This, again, is a standard Type 56. Now, here's another place where things get interesting. This is the standard Type 56. This is the 56C. They have actually drilled out 2 deep holes inside the bolt carrier here to lighten it. And the 56C bolt carrier is substantially lighter than the regular Type 56 AK bolt carrier. And I think that is probably the biggest reason why they have this adjustable gas block, is because you need to tone down the amount of gas coming out of this thing in order to not have a really excessive bolt velocity that's going to actually damage the gun fairly quickly. So you've still got like a major gas setting for adverse conditions if the thing gets really dirty and sluggish, but in standard use, you would definitely want to tone down the gas on this. So that's a cool design element, I think. The bolt is, as far as I can tell, exactly the same as a regular Type 56. So we have a free-floating firing pin in there, and otherwise just basically regular AK. This is chambered, I should say, I didn't mention this. This is chambered for 7.62 by 39. No special cartridge. It's not 5.45. It's not the Chinese 5.8 or anything. Just regular 7.62 by 39. All right, and that brings us to pretty much the end of the really unusual parts. The fire control group is standard AK in there. You can see we have an AK nut, a T-nut there, and bolt holding the grip on. Regular ejector, spot welded onto the receiver. There's our auto sear. You can see the end of the chrome line chamber. Actually, I can go ahead and take this off. So there's your upper handguard. Standard, it's normal, just like an AK, except a little bit shorter to fit the shorter barrel. You've got a little thin sheet metal heat shield inside the lower handguard. And there you go. There is a Chinese Type 56C field stripped. Apparently, the very first user of the Type 56C was the Chinese Navy Submariners Force. Now, exactly what they were using them for is not clear to me. This might have been an element of like submarine-born commandos who needed something particularly compact to use. Or I don't know, maybe they just wanted a very short rifle to put in stowage lockers in a submarine for boarding parties or whatever. They also went on to be used by other elements of Chinese special forces, as well as by the narcotics police, by border guards, by other specialized elements of the Chinese police. So as far as I know, they never really got into export sales very much. They certainly weren't a really successful export product the way other iterations of the Type 56 were. And it's really cool to get a chance to take a look at this one because they're pretty darn hard to find. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.